Do you struggle with conflict resolution? Listen, I realize that for many of us, we do not grow up learning the skills and the tools to resolve conflict. In fact, like if you're like me, you grew up in a family where when conflict happens, the resolution is just forget it, just let it go, just move on. But the truth of the matter is, we never let things go that bother us. And the thing about emotions and pain and hurt from our past is it doesn't let you go. So, an unresolved issue with a family member, particularly with your spouse, can lead to a long time of like slowly leaking hurt and poison onto one another. Because when you allow an issue to go unresolved, it's not that it goes away. And just because you stop thinking about it doesn't mean that you've truly let it go. What happens is now the little things that your spouse is doing become big things because you never resolved the issue that really did hurt you or bother you in the past. And so now things like, and this is mine, leaving cabinet doors open become a problem. I hear people arguing about something as simple as loading the dishwasher the wrong way, leaving your socks on the floor. So we begin to nitpick and be bothered by little things simply because we never took the time and we never had the courage to address the big thing. So this morning, I want to give you strategies for resolving conflict. But I want to talk a little bit first about what really is conflict. So, conflict is really just a disagreement or difference of opinion. But I think the worst conflict is when it's a difference of principles or values, right? Because too many times we don't stop and think about what our values are. So, when a person disrupt or offends our values. And our values are what we have built our life on, the rules per se, or the regulations, or the maybe it's they're the principles that you've built your life on. They are things that you believe so deeply that you think that if I break these rules or principles, if I live outside of these rules or principles, maybe they'll ruin my life. So imagine you have principles or rules or values that your spouse don't have, and you guys never discussed it. So values could be something like you maybe you're an honest person, you live with integrity, you value trust, you value open communication. Maybe you value ambition. And so now the conflict in the family is not just about an opinion. It's not about whether um, people fuss about toothpaste. So an opinion is you always squeeze from the bottom instead of the middle. And so maybe you're fighting about that little thing. But if you are really fighting or in conflict about a value, that's deeper. And so I want you to start thinking about what are the true arguments about? What are the disagreements about? And because if they are about your values, that is going to require a deeper conversation. But I want you to know how to have the deeper conversation so that you stop fighting about the silly things. Because I don't want your marriage to end with you thinking, this is a person I really love. I remember when there was a time when I enjoyed them so much. We laughed together. I thought the rest of my life was going to be with this person. I don't want you to end the marriage simply because you haven't learned how to effectively communicate your values. So if you have a high value of honesty in your spouse, say they value honesty, but maybe they grew up in an environment where a lie will do just fine. This is a conversation you have to learn how to get to. And how do you begin to get there? First and foremost, when you're in the middle of the argument, when you're in the middle of the conflict, you got to learn how to pause. First and foremost, like that's the number one thing. Uh, Start practicing not losing control when things aren't going your way. And I know for some people that sounds crazy. What do you mean not lose control condition? If they make me mad, I got to let them know. No, you do not. I'm a God girl. I assume that maybe you are a God girl or God guy too, meaning that you love the Lord, you read the Bible. The Bible tells us that we have self-control, that self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. So you do not have to lose control just because everything around you feels out of whack, because you have the power within you to have self-control. So when you're in conflict with your spouse, I want you to learn to pause. Try not to react in that moment where your emotions are at their heightened state. Even if you have to say, hey, I need a minute. And we have to learn that we have a spouse who's asking for a minute. We have to give them a minute. And I know for some of you, you're thinking, no, if I give them a minute, they're not gonna finish this argument. I want you to also shift your mind from this being an argument to we have a disagreement that can be resolved, and I don't have to be right in the situation. You may be thinking you're asking a lot, and I am. You know why I'm asking a lot? Because I value your marriage, and I believe you value it too. So I'm asking you to learn to relinquish this concept or this idea of right and wrong, not over your values, but definitely over your opinions. Meaning, we're going to stop fighting about how you load the dishwasher, if you left the cabinet open, how you left something on the counter. We're just going to take a deep breath, pause, so that we don't start a fight about these things. In that moment, I want you to start asking yourself, why does this bother me? Is there a bigger conflict in our marriage that never got resolved that this keeps nipping at? And so when it becomes the bigger conflict, because I really believe the bigger conflict is because of somebody has violated a principle or a value of the other person. So how do you then discuss that? You've paused, you've done some reflection, you've learned that maybe this conflict is really about they violated my values being honesty, truth, trust, compassion. Maybe you value um, your finances in a certain way, integrity, you value transparency. You need to start getting clear about what it is that your spouse has really violated. And so, in doing that, when you get that clarity, when it's time to have the conversation, you're not going to attack. You're not going to attack their character. You're not going to attack their personality. You're going to begin to use I statements. And you're not going to blame them for the thing they've done wrong. I felt violated when you said this. I felt unheard when you did the thing. I value honesty, and I feel attacked when you lie to me. I feel abandoned when you don't tell me the truth. I feel like a lie is the worst thing that can happen. So I'm asking you, is there a part in you or a place inside of you where you're willing to trust me with honesty? Will you allow me to hold a space for you to be honest and transparent with me and trust that you won't be attacked? But now, if you get to that place where you can learn to communicate at that level, you got to be able to also create the space where you don't attack what they say. One of the things I see happening a lot with couples is we can assume we know the answer to a thing. And so we stop asking questions for clarity. We ask questions trying to catch a person up in something they've done wrong. So these things just create more conflict. And I get it. Like, life isn't always easy or simple, and these relationships aren't simple. And yes, there are people out here who are manipulative, and they do things they're always hiding something. If that is your spouse, if that is who you married to, you got to do some self-reflection and figure out, how long are you going to stay in this? Because one of the hardest things to do is to, actually, it's impossible. I love it. A minister said this: we are so busy trying to change a person. Remember, it cost Jesus his life to change us. And so I want to ask you two things. Are you Jesus? And are you willing to give up your life to change someone? And if you're not, decide that in the conflict with my spouse, at best I can do is share with them how I feel, not attack, not blame, and be real honest about who I am. And maybe it's time to get honest about who they are. Because if you have married a person who lacks integrity, lacks the ability to be honest, doesn't value always telling the truth, you can't change them unless they want to be changed. And so instead of fighting all the time, instead of warring in the marriage, I encourage you to pray. Pray and ask God to intervene. Pray and ask God to change their heart. And in the meantime, while you're praying, be the example of the love and the trust and the honesty. And I know some of you guys, Kenisha, I'm already doing that. I believe you. But I'm just simply saying, yelling and screaming will not change the person or the situation. And so the third thing I invite you to with dealing with conflict and finding resolution in your marriage is instead of focusing on the problems, focus on the solutions. Like, are you willing to decide, okay, the solution is if it's honesty, if it's trust, decide what you can trust your spouse with. Can you trust them with the finances? Can you trust them to handle the children? Well, then you come up with a solution. Well, maybe that's their role, and that is what you agree that they do. Because right now, I don't trust you to manage the money. I don't trust you to be completely honest with me about this issue, but I can't keep arguing with you about it. And until you're ready to shift and change, here are the steps that we need to follow to maintain some level of peace, love, and joy in our marriage. Can you do that? Or is that too big of a task to handle? And so, if you can't resolve for yourself, if you can't manage the conflict, if it is as deep as principles and values that you are constantly fighting about, you may need help. You may need a therapist. You may need a marriage coach. You may need to go to your church if your church offer and have a strong counseling part in the church. Because listen, I believe that pastors and ministers, they mean well, but sometimes they're not equipped to really help you at the deepest level of your struggle. And I believe prayer is a wonderful tool, but it's not always a strategy. And if it is it's the tool to get the strategy. It's the tool to get the peace, to get to the place where you can hear from one another. But a strategy is now what are we going to do? And I don't think prayer is a strategy. I certainly believe it's a tool. And so if you're in a situation where the only thing a person can offer you is prayer, you just need someone else that has a little bit more strategies and more tools to help you resolve the situation. I want you to know that a conflict doesn't have to always be resolved by screaming and yelling at each other. There is a way to resolve conflict with peace and in kindness. But that requires you to learn emotional intelligence. It always comes back to emotional awareness. And when you get that, one, you're responsible for your emotions. You learn how to manage, control, be aware, communicate your emotions so that you then can create an environment for your spouse to begin to learn to do the same. And when you do those things, you don't have to fight and argue about everything, that you can resolve an issue with peace, love, and joy. I pray this for your marriage. I pray that conflict, unresolved conflict, does not be the end of your marriage, but that you are willing to do the work to learn how to restore and resolve and communicate effectively with your spouse so that you guys can move and have a good, peaceful, fun, loving, connected relationship. I want you to have an amazing day. I would like for you to do me a favor. I would like for you to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube Think Your Way to a Better Marriage. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.